just wanted to welcome you all to our Bioscience at Work Public Health. We're super excited to have you all here today. Thank you so much for joining us. Our event is going to go from 5:30 to 7 o'clock p.m. My name is Morgan Reidinger. I am an academic advisor in the Biochemistry and Microbiology Undergraduate Advising Hub. And then if I could have probably some other colleagues introduce themselves too, just so students kind of know who's in the room. So Kathy, did you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, I will go ahead. Hi, everybody. I'm Kathy Auger. I'm the director of the neurobiology major and one of the advisors. Welcome.
Awesome. Thank you, Kathy. And then Mike, did you want to go ahead and introduce yourself to the group?
Sure. Welcome, everyone. My name is Michael Cruz. I'm the Alumni Relations Coordinator at SuccessWorks.
Awesome. Thanks. All right. So then we're going to move forward here with the presentation. All right, so to give you all a little bit of background on how our time is going to be spent together. So we've got some wonderful alumni here with us this evening who are going to share with you a little bit about themselves, their position, and hopefully answer any questions that you have and kind of keep those conversations going. So we'll first start out by having the alumni, like I said, introduce themselves to the larger group, and then we will have the alum in their own breakout rooms with myself and some of my colleagues in those groups as well, monitoring the conversations, keeping the conversations going. We're hoping that you'll spend about roughly 15 minutes in each breakout room and then move on to the next breakout room. So just keep that in mind. We want you to be able to, get around and talk to all of the different alumni and ask all of your questions and get some answers. And then absolutely feel free to use your mic to verbally ask questions, or also feel free to use the chat as well. And I'll go ahead and other colleagues of mine will monitor that as the alumni are answering their questions. And then we hopefully are going to make this a super easy process for you. But each of the alumni, as I stated, are going to have their own breakout room. So you should be able to just select join with whichever breakout room you're looking to join. And then it should be super easy to navigate to another breakout room after 15 minutes or so. If you do have any troubles with this, let us know, but it should be pretty easy to navigate. All right, and then these are going to be our breakout rooms for the evening. So we have Kyle, John, Yejin, and Caitlin with us. John is going to be a little bit late, so we'll have that breakout room a little bit later, but we will go ahead and have them, like I said, introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about their position. And I'm just going to do a quick check here to see, or please let me know, anyone, if you see Kyle, or Kyle, let me know if you are here. Okay, looks like Kyle is not here. So we will go ahead with, let's see, so that would be Yejin. Did you want to go first?
Sure. Hi, my name is Yejin. I graduated UW 2005. Biochemistry major. I currently am working at NIH as a data scientist, and also joined Global Parkinson's Genetic Program, where I actually coordinate all kind of genotype data into global platform where we can actually unlink the genetic key actually to possibly solve the Parkinson's disease, or how it caused the Parkinson's disease.
Awesome, thank you. And then Caitlin?
Hi, I'm Dr. Caitlin Sundling. I am an MD PhD physician scientist at the Wisconsin State Lab of Hygiene. That's my home base. You might not know the state public health lab for the state of Wisconsin is actually based on the UW campus, which is a really great opportunity for all of you to learn a little bit more about public health in Wisconsin. that is my main place where I do my work, but I also have an academic appointment in the UW School of Medicine and Public Health as an assistant professor in pathology. I did my bachelor's degree at UW in biochemistry and math in 2005, then went on to do my MD and PhD as part of the medical scientist training program at UW. Stayed on at UW for my pathology residency, and then I went away to Harvard for 1 year for my cytopathology fellowship. So my specialty is cytopathology, which is really a specialty that focuses on minimally invasive diagnosis. So how can we get the most information from the smallest possible sample from a patient? That focuses mostly on cancer diagnosis, but also in some respects, cancer screening. And our main public health success story that you might know about is Pap tests, or cervical cancer screening, which is one of the big things that I do at the Wisconsin State Lab of Hygiene. We can be involved in diagnosis of any other site. A big example I like to give is lung cancer. We can do a complete cancer workup without ever having to do surgery for that patient. And then another thing that I'm involved in is circulating tumor cells, or liquid biopsy, which is kind of up and coming technology. So really excited to talk with all of you, and look forward to talking more.
Thank you, Caitlin. So before we move into breakout rooms, we've got one question for the alum to answer before we transition into that. And that question is, how has your UW-Madison education impacted your career path in your field? You may have mentioned a little bit about this in your intros, but if you could elaborate on it a little bit more, that would be awesome. And then Caitlin, Yejin, whoever wants to go first.
I can go if you'd like. So my education at UW has basically been so instrumental in figuring out what I wanted to do next. I'm not someone who knew I wanted to be a doctor when I came to undergrad. I think some people do, and that's great. Some people know exactly what they want to do. But I'm guessing if you're at an event like this, maybe you're exploring some options, which is really awesome. And UW gives you all these opportunities to not just learn the classroom side of things, but also get experiences. And my experiences both in the sort of classroom side of science, as well as the research side of science, really helped shape what my interests were. I knew I wanted to be in kind of the biomedical side of things, but also that I really wanted to do things that were for the greater good. And that's really a great intersection where public health is. So I got to explore a number of different areas at UW, and I think there are so many opportunities. It can be hard to decide what you want to do, but I think taking advantage of what you have available to you and just trying some things out can help get you started in the right direction.
I can't agree more with Caitlin's actually opinion. I completely agree that I think my UW education, even though I only did the biochemistry, it was actually medical pre-med tracks, and I think it gave me in wide range, but also depth of like enough for me to actually go into different field of biology or biochemistry. And then also it actually expand to genetics and other biomedical researches. And it was not only the class setting, but also the lab setting that actually be able to understand what is going on more than just like a academic level. And I think that helped me in transition on into different types of research, and then eventually going into the data science, where it definitely helped a lot on interpreting data and how actually data to communicate with the actual people who are medical doctors or researchers, right? Because we have to be in the bridge of the in between who are generating data and who are actually using the data. So I think in that sense, UW actually definitely helped me in giving me the good base of where I started my career.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Would either John or Ye Jin, hopefully I said your name correctly, please correct me if I'm wrong, care to weigh in on that question as well?
Sure, I can go next. I think the most satisfying parts of my job is definitely connecting the dots. I communicate with the people who are generating the data, and then also talk to people who are actually using the data set, right? Can be research labs like where Caitlin is working, where they're generating the data. Also can be like an imaging labs that John is working, right? And then be able to narrow it down, try to make sense of what data tells, and then be able to feed back to that what it means to the people who are actually be able to use the data and then be able to impact patients' lives or anybody else's life. I think that's really meaningful for me. At the same time, I can completely agree with Caitlin on challenging part is dealing with human being. Mainly because we are all different, and I think we need to all learn how to deal with different perspective and different people personalities. And I think learning that early on will be very helpful for anybody's career. And then at the same time, as a data scientist, it is challenging to be able to detect human errors, right? Because we all make mistakes, and sometimes mistakes happens when I'm least expecting. And be able to detect that and then be able to correct that is sometimes challenging, but when you actually be able to do that, it's very rewarding.
Thank you. Anything that you would like to add? Let's see, John. Okay, I think we'll go on since I'm not hearing anything else there. Students, what questions do you have? I'll check the chat here. There may be something in the chat that I haven't seen yet. Hi, John, you're back. Great, good to see you again.
Yes.
Yeah, tech issues is the theme of the night, right?
Yeah.
All right, so John, did you want to answer that question about the most rewarding or satisfying parts of your work and the most challenging parts?
Yeah, you know, rewarding the most, it's hard to really pick one thing. I guess that feeling that, you know, you actually do get to help someone in a meaningful way, you know, because in my line of work, often they come to me often on the worst day of their life, if it's an emergency, and being able to come in and potentially make them better, or at least, you know, reassure them, you know, in some way. And it can be both exhilarating and fulfilling, you know, alleviating pain, or, you know, fixing some type of underlying problem that's causing them harm. Frustrating, or opposite of fulfilling. I mean, I think a lot of the administrative work that I have to do is less than fulfilling. And then there can be a very number of difficult patients and or families. We kind of jokingly call it Burger King medicine, because they want it their way. And Dr. Google doesn't help very much, but you know, you learn with time how to dance around those difficult patients, and then techniques to really overcome the administrative issues. And, you know, a lot of it, they seemingly create to make more problems and headaches, and you guys may or may not have heard much about, insurance companies being the bane of doctors' existence. But yeah, that's kind of a daily, thorn in my side, is having to either interact with them or find out that they pulled a new fast one and have to, think about ways to overcome that. But yeah, that's kind of the gist of it.
Excellent, thank you. I think what I'm noting from all three of you, right, is that there are both rewarding and challenging parts of your work, even if it's something that you're really passionate about and excited about. And there's nowhere where you're probably going to just have rewarding and no challenge. And in fact, that would be boring, right? It would be not as interesting in our lives. I see that another student has joined us on camera. Thank you, that's fantastic. Do you have a question that you want to ask specifically? No pressure, of course, if you aren't ready yet, but if you are, go ahead and you can unmute yourself.
Hello, I have a questions. So I am currently a freshman right now, and I know it's like really early to attend this meeting with you all, but it's like really great to see you and heard the story and the experience that you guys are talking about. And I'm really like brainstorming and really happy, and I get a lot of thoughts from you all. And I was wondering what is the really early stages of like how you all like find your passion about, or what is your like interest like that like inspire you to go into the public health area and doing science and etc.
Whoever would like to start, go ahead.
I could start. I mean, I think, well, events like this are a really good way to get started. So I'm glad you're here. I wish I had done things like this early in my undergrad too, because it was sort of, probably there may have been things like this available, but I just, I was sort of a little bit more adrift, and it's just good to just to talk to people. And I think, if you connect with people and follow up, that's also good. I certainly would offer myself, if anyone in this group wants to follow up after this and talk more, I'm happy to set up a meeting. And I think the other thing is just kind of trying things out. Sometimes you might find classes that fit with your schedule that might work. That's not the only way to get into these topics, but also, research opportunities. And also knowing that sometimes learning what you don't like is also very valuable. So not every experience has to be like, wow, I love this. And sometimes if you start doing something like, say, you're interested in some research project, if you kind of get into it and you find it's not really for you, the topic doesn't really work or something like that, undergrad is a great time to kind of try things and not necessarily have to commit long term. And you may need to commit for a limited period of time to finish the whatever you signed up for credit or that sort of thing, but I think it's really good to kind of get into it knowing that not everything is going to be something you love, but you may find out there are some things that interest you more than others. If you find out that everything interests you, well, then you might end up like me and end up doing a little bit of everything, which is not a bad thing. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay, thank you so much. That's really helpful. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any of our other panelists? Go ahead. I was going to ask if you wanted to weigh in.
Yeah, I think everything Caitlin said is spot on. Often just trying things out, and if it fits, great. If it doesn't, that's not the end of the world. And UW has so many hidden gems that it's one of those great places that I think no matter what your interest is, there's going to be people like-minded and wanting to pursue it as well. And something that I happened to realize late in life, I think that is exceptionally beneficial, and it's good you're here early, as a freshman, but they call it networking, and I never quite understood what that meant. And they're saying, oh yeah, we have this meet and greet or this, that, or the other thing, and to me it didn't make sense what the purpose was. But now looking back, it's like, well, you just happen to meet people you might have never had an opportunity to run into ever before. And if you make a connection, fantastic. If not, so be it. And moreover, say you do meet people, and as life goes on, it becomes very helpful to have friends in various places, within your community, but then also outside of it. And say you have an interest and it's something that you're pursuing, and you have a connection that happens to be connected to someone who's connected to someone. In my experience, that's often a great way to help, facilitate, getting somewhere that's their goal. And it's basically just they're looking for someone exactly like you that has an interest in it. They just don't know where to put an ad up or who to email or how to get a hold of someone. And then you're sitting there on the other end of it. Gosh, I want to do this, but I don't know where to go for it or who's doing it, let alone how to let them know. And it's kind of this chain reaction of someone knows someone and they put you in touch, and then suddenly you're working in that lab or you're in that school or doing that job. So it's one of those things that I just absolutely missed the boat on as a student. And I think the business school probably does a great job somehow of setting that up for their graduates. I was just thinking by nature of business in general, but I know the science departments did a lot of it when I was there. I just didn't quite comprehend what it was all about. But now that I'm a bit more versed in the world, I think that's one thing I'd recommend to students. Even if you don't get it, just go, and then happen to meet people, it'll kind of come to you.
Thank you.
100% agree with both Caitlin and John, honestly. I found my interest very late. That's because of that, I ended up trying different things, and I definitely learned some things I actually don't really dislike. Like doing cell work, you have to go every weekend to feed your cells, and I said no thanks. So I think it's great to try out. And also networking is really important. I've heard so many times, as John pointed out, I think you never know what you find from other people, right? So even if you have a hobby where you go to clubs and then meet people or things like that, it never hurts from getting know more people. Like for me, I actually had a stay-home mother. I was a stay-home mother for 5 years, and I ended up finding my job at NIH because of my friend, where I was doing play date with my kids, and which I really never expected that. But anything and everything helps, and I highly recommend trying different things. And I personally did also a broad study during my undergrad time, and I think that will also help me open my eyes in seeing different cultures, and then that was also really helpful when I finally got my job and then be able to communicate with different people. So trying different things as many as possible, I think that'll be always helpful.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
A lot of really fantastic wisdom from all three of you. And I agree. Thank you very much. It's really interesting. You never know who you're going to meet in any given moment and how that person might connect you to a future opportunity, or get you thinking about a new path or a new field of interest that you hadn't considered before. and if you're somebody who doesn't, the phrase networking really kind of, it doesn't sit well with you, just think about it as making connections, right? And developing relationships that help you learn and help you explore. And it's a two-way street, right? It's not just like getting information from someone else, but it's also having that connection and sharing your own perspective and your own story and wisdom and experience. So yeah, and Mike dropped something in the chat. There are many excellent resources on networking at SuccessWorks. I just talked with a student this week about Badger Bridge, which is another wonderful resource of Wisconsin alumni, in addition, of course, to LinkedIn. So lots of ways to make connections, as well as at events like this. So kudos to you for coming as a first-year student. That's awesome. Other questions that folks have? Want to make sure that students get to ask all the questions that are on your mind. And you can, again, get on mic, get on camera as well with that mic, and or drop something in the chat. As you are thinking, and again, feel free to drop it in whenever is convenient for you. I have another question that I'm going to ask the panelists. Looking back, do you remember any specific class or training that was especially helpful or influential? And we'll put that in the chat as well. Whichever of our panelists wants to start, feel free.
If I could have three, that'd be great. But
sure, go for it. Three sounds awesome.
Yeah. So for medical school, I think biochemistry. I think it was 501, 502 at the time, but it was like the biochem majors intro. And just the way when I was there was Mike Cox and Dan Nelson were teaching it, and just it essentially mirrored the first year of medical school with a knowledge base. And it was amazing that they actually went into detail in every single thing. And to me, that's why I love biochemistry, is that detail and understanding the reactions and all of those things. So it gave me such a great basis for, looking into the biochemistry as a field and understanding it. So I found that course to be just kind of mind-blowing compared to the courses I had prior, to declaring my major and everything. And then the lab, the senior lab, and I forget the number for that one, but it was amazing that it was so involved, and so independent, and you had to really, I guess in some ways, just work. In my mind, really prepared me for the autonomy and self-startedness that was required to be a scientist and pursue grad school and just succeed in life. Is you can't just sit there and follow the lab manual and put the recipe out and get the answer the way you could in like Chem 103 or whatever. And then I guess the final one was the senior seminar, the capstone. Was just such an amazing thing that we had an emeritus professor, and I'm blanking on his name off the top of my head, but still kicking around, and he's in the National Academy of Sciences, and just that he's willing to spend time with senior undergrads and go through historic papers, to have us read them and analyze them and present them to one another, and then give his insight, which having the wealth of knowledge that he had being in this position, but then experiencing it throughout his career of, gosh, you know what, there is something called DNA, or look what we discovered now. kind of giving us that perspective of what life was like before and after some of these just amazing discoveries and how it really changed the field. So I think all three of those to me were just, classes like none other that, if I could take them again, I'd go back and do that in a second.
I think John picked the best ones, honestly. I kind of forgot about it because it's been so long.
Sorry, guys.
It's okay. I think among those, I mean, I love Backend 501 and 52, but I think the capstone class was definitely the best because that kind of gives you the perspective of what kind of work, like what workplace supposed to be like, right? Like if you go to work, that's what, like, you get your project, you have a motivation to move yourself into that and then able to study more and then present to somebody else. That's pretty much any workplace, right? It's not like somebody tell you to do something and you do that part. You have to learn, you have to do background study, and then you have to be able to move along with that, and then be able to communicate with other people on where your progresses are, and then be able to present what your results are. I think that's basically what biomedical researchers are in any field, and learning that in like one class was fantastic skills. Every skills that you are requiring. I think that was really, really the top of the biochemistry major in the classes.
Yeah, there were a lot of really great courses and experiences. I'm going to go back a little earlier in my experience, and I took BioCore as my intro biology. I know not everyone does BioCore, and I know that program is still around, and it's a really great opportunity for people who are just getting started and have that option. But it's not just the course itself, but one particular part of it that I wanted to emphasize, which was how to read a research paper. I would say the BioCore course kind of was my introduction to that, as well as in sort of my research experience. So when I joined my first undergrad lab, I met with the PI, the head of the lab, and he gave me that, we started talking on some topic, and then a couple days later, he handed me this research paper. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. I just thought that the topic was very interesting, and you start to learn how to get new knowledge, and how are you going to critically evaluate it, and how are you going to incorporate that into the things that you already know. And I think that's one of the most important things. Whatever course you take that you can do that with, or whatever experience you have that you can sort of get some mentorship in how to interpret the research literature is really important. That you'll take that with you, and you can use that your entire life.
Thank you. That's really fantastic to hear all the thoughts that you have. I think one of the amazing opportunities of being a college student is that it just gives you a chance to explore and learn and just develop in amazing ways. And really enjoyed hearing your all stories about your experiences with your respective courses. For students, Amy did drop in the chat specific information about how the courses that were mentioned translates into the current course numbers, so that if you are still considering what you're taking in the future, can consider these courses. So so our next question, unless anybody has one and wants to weigh in here, any students have another question that you'd like to ask? All right, I'm gonna ask the next question then. We are getting pretty close to finals week, so saving up the energy there. So our next question is, what advice do you have for students who want to go into your field? What should students be doing to prepare themselves to be successful in this field? And again, we'll drop that in the chat, but I'll repeat it one more time. What advice do you have for students who want to go into your field? And what should students be doing to prepare themselves to be successful in this field? Whoever wants to start.
I'll go first. Because data scientist is very technical position, definitely helpful to be able to learn the tools and use the tools would be the first thing to prepare as a career. And then I will suggest, because there are so many different programming languages, I highly recommend searching what interests you, and then what the field requires, what type of languages, right? So if you are going into public health domain, closely related with the specific health, I think a lot of SAS or other older languages are really helpful to learn. But if you're looking forward to go into like imaging research, the MATLAB and Python are definitely much stronger suits. If you're going into bioinformatics, if definitely R or Python. Those are most of the languages are, I think, interchangeable these days. And then especially if you're planning to learn Python or R, there are ways to integrate older languages into the newer languages. But I think doing that research first and be able to pick a couple languages, because you will not able to learn all of them, will be the first steps. And then try to take a couple courses and see how you like it. And that will be very helpful. And once you establish that and then be able to know basic of the languages, I think volunteering or working in the lab, actually handling the data sets, because once you have the experience of handling the data sets, you get the idea of how we can actually make it better code. There are two different importance when we actually work. First is how fast you can work and how efficiently it works, but at the same time also it has to be very clean and not breakable when you actually create a pipeline for larger data sets. So being able to actually just use some kind of data sets, play with it, definitely helps to get a nice sense of how we can actually do that, building the bigger pipeline. So I think that'll be the best steps for you to actually prepare as a data science in undergrad.
Thank you. Caitlin, John?
Yeah, I would say students who want to go perhaps into pathology in general, I think it's good to talk with some physicians as much as you can. I know it's really hard to get shadowing experience in medicine in general. So, I think pathology is actually a better area for that because we're behind the scenes. There can actually be more opportunities. It's a little bit more laid back. It's not, it's still busy, but and definitely, just keep me in mind too. I'm right on campus, and we do a lot of virtual experiences too, as far as we can share the feed from our microscope over a video conference. So that's something we've been doing a lot over the pandemic to help with training and kind of get people more experience. So can give you a good idea of like, okay, is looking at through the microscope all day, is that something I'm really interested in, or is that something that gets pretty boring after the first half an hour? But the other thing is, in pathology, you don't go straight into pathology. You start out in general medical school, which is a lot of clinical medicine. So I think it's good to know those other areas of medicine and kind of get an idea of what you're getting into and what your other interests are. I would say the other closely allied areas in medicine would be radiology, as another diagnostic field. So pathology, radiology, those kinds of things, you're more on the diagnostic side of medicine. As far as preparing, medical school is quite competitive. As I mentioned in our breakout room, that medical school is not the only way to get into the field of cytology. So if you're interested in looking at cells through the microscope from human samples, there is this other profession called cytotechnology. And I will put a link to our cytotechnology program in the chat. We have a 1-year post-baccalaureate program that takes people from usually biology related undergrad degree to being trained in using a microscope, all the skills that you need to find really rare abnormal cells under the microscope, sometimes like one in 1,000 cells or fewer. So cytotechnology is a good option for people who might be interested in a shorter career path, and it doesn't have as many prerequisites as medical school too. So it's a really nice option. Different workflow, different typical day, and a little bit more of in many ways a better balance of sort of the responsibility versus the challenge of the career. So cytotechnology is a good option. I certainly didn't know about it when I went through training. I think I made the right choice. I'm the one who has the most responsibility, but it's there for people who are interested. And another thing that you should think about in preparing yourself, if you're interested in learning more about pathology and a little bit about public health too, our Pathology 404 course is a good way to do that. It's a survey of pathology that I think we may be revamping it a little bit, so that may look a little different next year, but we offer that usually in the spring. There are a few other pathology courses, but that's the main one that would be like a survey of a lot of different topics within pathology, so you can kind of get an idea of what pathology is all about.
So I'm more clinical medicine, and as Caitlin mentioned, medical school is one way to get into being a doctor. For that, certainly reaching out to the pre-medical advising can be helpful. Realistically, it's one of those things that, there's kind of I guess a formula would be the best way to put it, but when you look at medical schools in general, they have years of data on what they've historically accepted for things like GPA, things like a test score. So those can be a bit reverse engineered, and then they put a fair amount of focus, as Caitlin mentioned, on things like shadowing, and even just volunteering is a big thing for a lot of schools. So what I did was I called up the VA and asked how I can help out there. So they had me Tuesday and Thursday evenings going around and refilling ice pitchers at the bedside. And it's to get you exposure to it, because I think regardless of the career, a lot of times we have kind of a fantasy view of what it's like, to be that. And then often, as Sarah was mentioning, any job is going to have its downsides. And what it comes down to is, before you invest 4 years of your life and hundreds of thousands of dollars in, choosing to be a doctor, and even when you finish medical school, you can't do much with an MD. So it's one of those things they want to know, what you're getting yourself into. So shadowing and exposure to medicine is important to establish. If the 4-year / investment of time and money scares you off, there's alternative routes to being involved in clinical medicine. Be it through the physician assistance programs, which I think UW has as well, and then nurse practitioners or CRNAs, or even anesthesia assistants. granted, if you're a biochem or molecular biology major, the nursing side of things is less direct path. You'd have to potentially go back to get a nursing BSN, and then you can enter that pathway. But needless to say, grades and scores tend to be the biggest marquee. For neurosurgery in particular, as Caitlin was mentioning about pathology, med school is just the first step. After that, you have kind of a wide, branching of specific specialties and subspecialties and various minutiae of things that we focus on. So for neurosurgery, similar to getting into med school, it's your grades and scores, but then likewise doing research in neurosurgery. So aligning yourself with the neurosurgeons at your school or in an area. Some folks even will take a year off to spend time between their second and third or third and fourth years, just working either in a basic science neurosurgery lab or at a program that's very large and does a lot of clinical research. Clinical and basic science research tend to be pretty widely different. Basic science is, as you can imagine, either data sets or running experiments at the bench. And somewhat as a rule, it's considered to be much more valuable, quote unquote, to have in your CV when you apply to things, because it takes a lot more time and investment and thought process to really, have what we call true science, where you come up with a hypothesis and various tests, for the null hypothesis and, the supporting statements and such, and takes a number of experiments, and you have to synthesize the data and write it up and get it accepted to a journal, and while you're talking about journals, find one that's actually PubMed indexed, because there's a lot of predatory ones out there that'll take your money and put you online. But at the end of the day, clinical research is a lot simpler in some ways. That we have things as simple as, it's called a case report, but an interesting patient, the pathology was new or novel or had some sort of interesting distinction about it compared to the textbook, or as a surgeon, you do something different, or address the problem in a different way. You can basically write a report saying, this is what I did or what I found, look at how neat it is. And most journals have case report sections, even New England Journal. But even big clinical trials and things like that generally tend to be far easier to come by and help with as a med student or even undergrad, just because a lot of it's just collecting the data about a patient or series of patients or so on and so forth, and then doing the statistics to determine what's significant and what's not. But yeah, then once you're a neurosurgeon, there's various levels of success, if that makes sense. But needless to say, I think just striving for your goals and what you personally said as success is the most important thing. And be it neurosurgery or medicine in general, clinical medicine is a very wide field, because you can imagine any part of your body has problems and there's doctors to help with that. And then even aside from medicine, there's millions and millions of things you can do with a science degree. So it's one of those things that's just kind of the sky's the limit. Whatever you can dream can happen if you find the right way.
Wonderful, thanks so much. I really think experience is a powerful teacher, and that's much of what you all were talking about through the stories and the examples that you gave. So taking time to get that experience in whatever ways you can as a student. And Amy put a couple suggestions in the chat related to CNA or EMT certifications as an accessible step. Thank you also for the information on NIH summer internships as well. Want to give students the opportunity, if any of you have a question that you would like to ask, you can certainly drop that in the chat now before we ask our last question to our panelists. So I'll give it a good 10 seconds. All right. Our last question here for the panel, and thank you so much to each of you for all the wisdom that you shared this evening. So after listening to you today, what is one step or one action item that the students can do right now to start or continue their journey in this field? So again, after listening to you today, what is one step or action that students can do today to start or continue their journey in this field?
If you're really interested in data science, I think you can start Googling. Go to, there are a lot of online platforms where you can also try to taste different languages. So Coursera's, or there are many platforms, so you can Google and see. If you like if you set on one language, I think it's a great way to get a course in that language and see how far you can get. Once you establish the, I think depth, you'll be able to dive into the data science field right away. So I think that'll be the first step.
So yeah, I think as an undergrad, the first step, if you decided you wanted to pursue this field, would be to I guess take stock in where you are in life currently, be it a freshman or super senior, and look at kind of, as I mentioned, what the benchmarks are, or the hurdles you have to clear to get to the next step, and see where you align with that, and if you're not quite there yet, what do you need to do to get there? And if you are there, shoot your shot. And then, while you're taking the stock, look for resources that are available, be it tutoring, if you need help with understanding material or grades, be it research opportunities, to get more involved in those types of things, volunteering, and it's one of those things that I think I might have figured out the hard way for that as well. But if you start looking forward as to where you want to be in life, and each thing is a milestone, but it's also a step that often is where a fork in the road occurs. And if you figure out what the determining factors for each fork is and how to get on the fork you want to be on, and aim in that direction, and things certainly line up. But that being said, I think, and I'm going to paraphrase this, but I watched this lecture years ago from this, I think it was at Carnegie Mellon. He was a computer scientist, and it was called like the last lecture, because he had this diagnosis of pancreatic cancer. Needless to say, he had this statement that in life, often we run into brick walls, and that, gosh, well, we're so hard set on this thing happening, and we're laser focused, and that's it. And guess what? Didn't work. So the options really are just abandon ship and give up your dream or your goal or whatever you'd plan to do. But if that's truly what you're intended to do, don't see it as a brick wall, or if it indeed is a brick wall, like, back up the alley, take a different turn, and find a way around it. So a little perseverance goes a long way. and just keep working.
What I would say, just to kind of add to that, I would start thinking about your future career in at least two ways, and there are probably other ways to conceptualize this, but I would think about concepts or values that you want to contribute to. Those are kind of like the big picture things. What do you want to say? This was my life's work. And then also the other side is sort of things you love to do. And this is kind of like if you think about like, if you were on a desert island with the music of only one artist, what artist would you choose? Like then instead of the artist, it's like kind of what are the tasks that you could do all day and still feel energized, and start trying to match up your career from each of those columns, and you can figure that out by talking to more people. And if talking to me might be helpful for that, I did put my email in the chat too, so feel free to follow up with me if any of the things that I've mentioned about my career path would be helpful to hear more about.